Welcome to Monkey Chatter. Before we get started, we have to say that while we think we are really smart, we definitely are not doctors, and you should not be taking our advice as medical advice. Everything we say on this show is based on personal experiences, and any guests we have on are not on to help diagnose or treat or cure any disease. Please reach out to your doctor if you have specific medical questions. And now that we're done with kind of the legalese of the show, we want to get on with the fun stuff. So carry on. Let's get down to Monkey Chatter. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Monkey Chatter. This is Lara, and I'm, of course, here with Amy and Michelle. And our special guest today is Sheryl Woolverton. Sheryl is a holistic social worker, life coach, guide, mentor, and cheerleader. And she's on a mission to help high achieving women who feel lost in their life and career rediscover their true path. And she believes it's never too late to do that. And I met Sheryl actually through a business accelerator course that we took together during the pandemic in 2020. We met virtually. And then later we met in person because we just happened to be from the same town in Lexington, Kentucky. And we've been friends ever since, and we've done some workshops together. I've actually done some coaching as well with Sheryl, and I just love her to death. So welcome, Sheryl.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
And Amy and Michelle are on with us as well, as you know. And so why don't we start with maybe, Sheryl, give us a little of your background and how you got into coaching.
Well, as you said, I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a life and wellness coach and also a speaker. I'm here in Lexington. I am a former grief counselor who utilizes her personal and professional experience and knowledge in rebuilding and reinventing lives. As I said, I started off as a grief counselor, and one of the things that you do, unfortunately, when someone dies, is that you are rebuilding your life. And much of my work as a counselor was coaching and moving, helping people to move forward. It was a very natural segue to move into coaching. And so I have the privilege now of working alongside women as they navigate, whether it be a fresh start, it's a loss that they were unexpected and planned, or just sometimes just life detours that are thrown at them.
And it is great. And I do notice, like, that's the thing I really appreciated about coaching with you was you bring a different kind of empathy to the coaching sessions than I think a lot of coaches do because of your background with the grief counseling.
Thank you. Well, and I think it's important that we recognize anytime you're making a change, there is a loss. There is grief, and anytime that, even if it's a horrible habit, we still are going to grieve. And I think that's always important to note that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and all Amy, Michelle, and I have all gone through some pretty big stuff recently. Very recently in some cases, I know. And some of us are still going through some things. And yeah,
Mhm.
where you not only do you grieve the person that you may have lost, but when you're going through the process of even somebody's, health or habits changing, you grieve the person they used to be. So
Exactly.
that is a big part of change, and it's inevitable. We all know that, but having someone there to help you guide through change, and it could be the loss of a career, it could be that you want to make a career change. Who do you find? What kind of clients do kind of seek out your coaching?
The women that I work with are high achieving. They have succeeded in their careers, and it's quite interesting. I actually right now have several women who have worked in predominantly male oriented fields. It wasn't something that I went seeking, but most of these women are in a place now where they've achieved great things, and now it's time to do something else. They maybe it's. I don't like to talk about retirement because I think that you're just transitioning to something else, because many of my clients who are maybe late 50s, early 60s are beginning to think about that, and they hate the word retirement. So we're looking at, no, you're moving into another chapter of your life. But I've worked with all kinds of women. I have a couple of young women in their 20s who are just starting out in their careers, getting married. So that's, it kind of runs the gauntlet. I have 25 to I've worked with someone who's 70.
One thing I love about your style and one of your slogans is it's never too late. And you just mentioned you have a 70-year-old client. So tell us a little bit about that and what kind of brought that on.
Well, once again, when you have started your career helping people reinvent their life after a death, I mean, you know that it's you will see people do such dramatic things. And as women, unfortunately, I think that we've been stereotyped to think, well, this is all that there is. And also working with people in a variety of different careers, that becomes their identity. And so then if they lose a job, you know, even if they've lost, someone in their life, it's like, what do I do next? And I'm a firm believer, first of all, in continuing just to educate yourself and continuing to grow, and I just want to empower women, and like it's never too late. You can go back to school at 65 or 70. I'm fortunate enough to have a very good friend who is 81. She just last year stopped teaching at the counseling center at the University of Kentucky.
Wow.
She is working in private practice as a psychologist. She is taking a 2 year spiritual program where she travels to Asheville, North Carolina every quarter. She's actually thinking about moving to Mexico afterwards. And she's 81. I had dinner with her a couple of weeks ago, and I said, her name is Sharon. I said, Sharon, I want to be you when I grow up. And she's like, who said you had to grow up? And
Oh,
so
I love that.
I am fortunate enough to have so many women in my life that I just have seen they just keep growing, and I think it's so important to let everybody else, just because something has ended, whether you planned it or it was unplanned, does not mean that there's not a new chapter.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I
Oh,
love
can I
that.
ask Cheryl a question, you guys? It's
Yeah,
Michelle, of
absolutely.
course.
Yeah, Michelle's the
Curious
The
curious
monkey.
curious
monkey.
monkey.
So, Cheryl, because I'm in that category you were just talking about, kind of early 60s, trying to figure out what to do next. So, are there any common sort of um, questions, or when you start working with a client who's in that space, where do you kind of begin that conversation with them?
Well, and I know that you guys have mentioned it before on here, but we do start off with the life wheel of looking at how satisfied they are in certain areas of their life, and if there's an area that's really significantly low, we're going to start there. But then I don't mind telling you guys this exercise because I encourage everybody to do it, and I do it regularly. I ask my people to sit down, and within 15 to 20 minutes, you have to give yourself a time frame, list everything that they like. And I mean everything, and for many people, this is not an easy task. But the reason I start there is that I want to get to know you. I have found that unfortunately, I think it's narrowed down to three things when we meet somebody for the first time. What do you do for a living? Are you married? Do you have kids? And that kind of goes back to, from an identity perspective, we are so much more than those three things. But really, I mean,
Mm.
we very narrow it down. I mean, I want to know, where's your favorite vacation spot? What's the last concert you went to, if you like concerts? And there's so much more to you than that. And so, really, believe it or not, that's one of the places I start. I want to know the small little things that you like to get. What is it? OPI is Big Apple Red on your, as a pedicure. I mean, but it's really, it helps you to get to know yourself, because many times women particularly have spent so much of their time taking care of other people
Mm.
and focusing on other things that they have lost themselves, and they just need to rediscover themselves.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true, and I think you're right, and I have stopped asking some of those questions now that I'm older, and I also have met so many different people in, owning a small business where we're, very we're a lot about relationships, and, we have a lot of connections with our clients, and number 1, like, it's kinda interesting situation, but, like, out of the 4 of us here, 3 of us don't even have kids, So and also, I think all 4 of us have gone through some major transitions in our work identities. So that's not really like, it might be who we are now, but it wouldn't have been 5 years ago, which I think is super interesting that that's
Yes.
changed so much. So those things that we always ask strangers or people when we first meet, it's interesting to see a different perspective on what makes up what, like a life, if you will, and how you make your life, which used to be your old kind of like slogan, I know, and I loved that too. So
Yeah.
you're going through a little bit of a redesign yourself, it
Yeah.
sounds like.
I
Do you
say
want
that
to
what
talk
I'm
at all
doing.
about that?
I like to say, I'm sorry, let me go over
Oh,
topic,
no, go
but
ahead, go ahead.
I like to say that what I'm in the process of doing right now is a lot like when you move your house, in that you are, you're boxing things up from one website and one brand and moving everything over to a new platform. You don't really know where anything's at. You're trying to figure it out. You get frustrated. It's all of those things. And I decided to rebrand for a couple of different reasons. Is that I do write a newsletter called Sunday Sessions with Cheryl. When I send out my Zoom meetings, it's usually session with Cheryl. And so it was just kind of a natural, logical thing. I also wanted to begin offering online programs and doing some programs like that. And the designer that I'm working with, she's a local business owner herself, and she had started a new platform. And I really wanted to support her. And it was one of those natural things of like, I had been thinking about doing this for like a year and a half, and it was I was standing in my own way, and I just decided just to jump, um, and do that. But I'm still trying to figure things out. I'm halfway in one place, and my newsletter hasn't been transitioned over because I'm still trying to figure out the programming, and but it's getting there.
Well, I'm excited for you. I've noticed some of the rebranding because I was, on the new website, and
Hmm.
I love it. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. And you're coming through really well on the website. If you guys want to check it out, it's sessionswithcheryl.com, I think. We don't
Yes,
have
and
a
it's
ton of
Cheryl with an
followers.
S.
Cheryl with an S,
Yes.
Sheryl. And another thing that I think about with Cheryl is a huge advocate, if you will, of the gratitude practice. And I know it's the easy thing to say to people, like, "Oh, just be grateful for what you have," or whatever. But I feel like that's just not that easy for a lot of people. And I know, Cheryl, you work gratitude practices in quite a bit with your with your coaching. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that got started and what you kind of your view on that whole gratitude practice thing, because it's kind of a hot topic
Sure.
right now anyways.
Right. Well, and it's cliche to say it, but gratitude will change your life.
Mm.
It truly will. It has changed my life. I am a journal writer from I don't even know when. I started writing in a journal. And years ago, I went to a journal training, an excellent journal training, and she started talking about gratitude. This was way before, positive psychology really kind of got out there, and they were talking about the benefits of it. Um, and once again, I think that a gratitude practice can be whatever it needs an individual to be. That's one thing I work on too, is that I will give you a guideline of what to try, but everybody has to find what's best for them. And whether it's that you're writing it down, in the evening or in the morning, or that you just enjoy your cup of coffee and you're like, oh, I'm grateful for dot dot dot. Um, I know that for me, I really found the significance of gratitude and how it will change and rewire your brain. Because, in essence, that's what you're doing. When you start practicing gratitude, you're teaching your mind to walk into any situation and look for something that is good, that is, I'm going to use the word positive, that instead of, because once again, our brain has a negativity bias. Our brain is wanting to protect us. So it's always
Mhm.
about, well, that's bad, that's bad, and that's bad. But developing a gratitude practice is truly you're rewiring your brain. And so for me, the moment that really stood out for me is that it's been 11 years now. My mom was diagnosed with cancer and in a very short time died. But I, of course, was her caregiver as far as like managing her care. Of I didn't have to live with her, fortunately, but I was backing out of my driveway, and at the same time, I was um, teaching at the University of Kentucky. I had a 40-hour plus job of being a grief counselor. I was supervising a counseling student, running a support group because I'm high achieving and I do all the things. And
Type
it was
A.
like it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm backing out of my car, or about my driveway in my car, because I've got some place to do, and I'm thinking about everything. And my first thought went to how grateful I was for somebody in being able to take my mom to an appointment. It was
Mm.
like one of those. It was like, it wasn't like, oh my God, my day is horrible. It was, oh, I'm so thankful I have this. And I'm so thankful I have a supervisor at work who's understanding. And I actually stopped my car, like, oh, okay. And during that time also, I was actually, this is what started my blog years ago. I was actually blogging not only about my mom's illness, but about some other things. And so I was outwardly able to share with people, you know, this this was amazing to be able to have that moment. And I wasn't looking at all of the horrible things. I was looking at the the gratitude. And so I pass it along to my clients. Once again, a cliche statement, there's always something to be grateful for, but you can choose to look at a brick wall out the window, or you can be grateful that there's a window.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's I think coming from your experience, and thank you for sharing that, first of all. I think that's one thing I found so, um, uh, I don't know, valuable as, being when I was your student and you were my coach, knowing that you had gone through some really hard stuff, like some tragic hard stuff. Um, and having that vulnerability to share that with people and letting them know, in a way, it kind of gives you some credibility too, because you're living it. You're not just preaching it.
Having clients is a wonderful accountability partner, because I practice what I preach. I'm not always perfect, but I always tell my clients that I'm out here doing the work right alongside of you. I'm coaching myself. And um, there are many times that when I have to make a decision to do something, or I'm thinking about something, and I'm like, well, what would you tell your client? And do that self coaching, which is something that I often have to do a lot of, because I'm human, and I think that that's important. We too often will, especially if we talk about social media and we look at some of the bigger coaches, or we look at things, and we can set them up on a pedestal, and the reality is their life is messy. They're just not telling you it's messy.
Well, speaking of that, are there any coaches that you do follow? Like, the big coaches, like we've all heard of some big names, I'm sure. Is there anybody that you particularly resonate with or like to recommend?
Actually, the coaches that I recommend are not going to be your big tier coaches. All good and well. I do. I listen to what am I doing? She does the Gold Digger podcast.
The gold digger.
Jenna Kutcher, Gold Digger. Yeah, GOAL Digger. I listen to
Oh,
her from a
gold.
business perspective every now and then.
Mhm.
But honestly, Courtney Townley, who does Grace and Grit, and I have done actually individual work with her, is somebody that I really love following, because I feel like she's once again kind of like what when I did one session, when I was doing a session with her, and she was asking me where I wanted to go in regards to with my programming, and I said, well, I kind of like want to do what you're doing, because she's just as a I'm using quotations here, a normal woman. She's out there being supportive of women in midlife, and doing the work herself. So that's honestly that's it. I don't follow a lot of the bigger. I have like the life coach school with Brooke Castillo, who's I sometimes might listen to her, but not all the time. But really, there's not a whole lot of big ones that I listen to, not on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well, I like that you're in the trenches with us all. I mean, that's kind of to me like, and that's a big important part of choosing a coach. And I do want to talk about that, like what kind of recommendations you might have for people who are looking for a coach. But before we do that, I wanted to see if you would talk about something that I remember you telling me about this. And then I think you had like a little booklet that you put together. And I totally love this term, but it's about your inner mean girl. Talk about your inner mean girl.
Well, and I should say that actually this is another. She is a business coach out of Cincinnati. That I kind of took some of this from her too. But I developed a book that's called Mastering Your Self Talk, and I encourage people, once you recognize that you have this negative self talk that is going on, to honestly personify this as a third person. And I've had some people go through and like, what does this person look like? How do they sound? Because that way, then when you hear those things, you're recognizing it's coming from someone else. It's not you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have people call it, your mean girl. We've all encountered the mean girl in life. Or it can be your inner critic. It's, my husband and I like to talk, it's like the Muppets, the two little critics that are sitting up there, like throwing things down at you, the drill sergeant, I think it can fall into one of those three categories. And then I encourage people to stop and think, once you've developed that, and I have people name their mean girl. And I actually have a client who she named hers Penelope because she hated that name. And believe it or not, this is what's so funny. She sent me this the other day. It's like her great niece was born and they named her Penelope.
Oh no.
She's like, what?
Yeah, that name will forever be tainted.
Forever. So but I think that by naming it, you're able to say, wait a minute, this is not me. That's Penelope, or that's Patty, or that's whoever that is. And
we all have that too. I feel like everybody sitting here, all my friends, like that little voice that you'll be doing something, and then all of a sudden that voice will pop in your head and say, like, don't do that. That's stupid. Or, or catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror and say something mean about yourself. Like, that's just like, who is that girl? Get rid of her.
Well, and Lara, that's the thing, is that we have so many subconscious thoughts that we're not even fully aware of. And that's what I like to work on when I'm looking at, if we're talking about the mean girl, is that we are not 100% aware sometimes of what we're saying to ourselves about ourselves. It's become so commonplace. And I think that I'm getting ready to do a class tomorrow night on thought work. And they say the average, we can have like 6.7, 6.5 thoughts a minute. And so, we're not conscious of all those thoughts. They're just kind of, and our brain needs to have thoughts that just are not, we're not truly just autopilot. And so I really think, unfortunately, the narrative is often autopilot, that, people then develop, you think something enough, it becomes your belief system. And
yeah, it's like you talked about that rewiring the brain, because when we tell our brain over and over, or we tell ourselves over and over negative situations, our brain starts following those pathways. What do they call it? Neural elasticity. You can rewire that stuff.
Yeah.
But it takes practice.
Neuroplasticity. Yeah.
Neuroplasticity. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, back to you. I'll finish up with the book I think you're talking about, Lara, is I encourage people, once you decide you've heard that negative voice and you are able to catch that negative thought, what do you need to hear instead? I mean, and one of those is, do you need to speak to yourself like you would speak to your pet or your child? I wake up every morning and tell my cat how gorgeous he is, and that he's awesome, and he knows that he is, but it's recognizing what do I need to hear instead? And it's a very quick, it's speaking to yourself as a pet parent or an actual parent, the cheerleader. Maybe you need somebody who's just there to, like, you can do this. You've got this. You may also need what I call the scientist, because it could be, if you're going around saying, well, I can't think of it exactly. Like, say someone had failed a test, and so I'm really, I'm so horrible and dumb and ... Maybe you need somebody who says, are you really? It's like, let's be the scientist and look at this here. Where's the proof that, this is that. And then also then maybe you just need a coach voice. And I think the difference between a cheerleader and a coach is the coach is, and many of my clients will say, I had you on my shoulder, Cheryl. I was up there, and I'm coaching them through it, of like helping them then to like look at the options, and what is something new. And working with my clients enough, I mean, in time it becomes just commonplace to be able to do it.
Yeah. Amy or Michelle, do you guys want to pop on with any questions or comments or anything? I'm sure neither of you have an inner mean girl.
I love the talk like you're talking to your pet, because man, I would be the most awesome thing on earth if I talked to myself like a pet. My dogs.
But Amy, you are. You are. I mean,
they just walk on water. No, I guess my question, I'm kind of jumping back a little bit when you were talking about gratitude, because I'm really big on the whole gratitude thing as well. Actually, it's funny. I won't go into the whole thing, but I just did an event, and like the word that kept coming into my, kept coming to mind after that was just gratitude. Like that's all I could think of. And so I was just curious if you have any good resources for people who like books or any resources that you may have on your website or anything that you may have available as well to help people that may be struggling with that or find that difficult.
I think one of the best places to start on the internet is actually, it's Greater Good magazine, and it's Greater Good Berkeley. It's out of Berkeley, but they have done so much research in regards to just the power of gratitude, giving ideas on how to practice gratitude. Another author or researcher that I suggest, not only in regards to gratitude, but also journal writing, is James Penneberger. And he has done such significant research, I should say, on the power of journal writing. And part of the journal writing is writing down the gratitude. I haven't got it up yet on my website, but I have created a couple of just books that I do provide for free in regards to gratitude. And I think that we have to recognize sometimes people have been so wired from a negative perspective that they don't think that they can, find anything good. And it really does come down to thought work, and that how we think is a skill. And how do we improve any skill? We do it over and over and over. And many times people who are, they'll give up on a gratitude practice. I don't see anything I'm grateful for, or they forget it. So then they do, all or nothing thinking, and then they get back into old patterns. So it takes work. It takes wanting to practice it and to develop a skill. And, I think that in the past, I've done a couple of, I hate to call them challenges, but like 14 days of gratitude during, November, just encouraging people to stop and look at very simple things of what you're grateful for. Because I think that when you're talking about gratitude, a lot of people think it has to be big and bold. And the reality is it can be that somebody held the door open for you, or that salesperson smiled at you. And then you're able to kind of build on that.
Right. Cool.
I know I've shared this, I think, with Lara and Amy, but I don't know if I've ever shared it on the podcast. I can't remember. But when my mom was at end of life, one of the things I had asked her to do a few years before that was to start a gratitude journal, because she was in sort of that woe is me kind of thing. And I was thinking I had all the answers for her, like, oh, well, you just need to start here, let me buy you a journal and I can fix this, And, but one of the wonderful things is she did it and kept it up for like, I don't know, 5 years. So, right, almost up until she passed away. And so after she died, I sort of took it and put it in a drawer with all the other things I couldn't quite manage at the time. And every once in a while, if I'm having a bad day, I'll go pull it out and see what she was grateful for that day. And invariably, it's something like, I'm so glad it didn't snow today, or I'm so glad Michelle stopped by, or, just these little, I'm glad the car maintenance bill wasn't too high,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
grateful for that. So I do think it's true that like it's the really little things that often have the biggest impact. So I just wanted to share that, especially given your hospice background, what a huge gift that is to have that now,
Oh, yeah.
after the fact.
I was just
Yeah.
thinking, what a huge gift to be able to have. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. And I had listen, when I gave it to her, it was from a pretty snarky place. I was like, listen, suck it up. I don't know. Like, I don't have time for this. I'm having a life. I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Sundays are hard for you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it came from sort of this, like, come on, mom, it ultimately became a really beautiful gift. And I think also it helped her too, because it did make her every day kind of take a minute and go, all right, well, there must be something good here,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
I would say that it likely helped her. I mean, especially as individuals get older, many times the days kind of flow into one day, and that probably helped her also than just setting her days of like, what was it today about today?
Mm.
And I'm going to go off of something you said, Michelle, is that the reality is our life is full of little moments.
Mm.
We spend so much of our time anticipating big events and big things, but it is the small moments that honestly can really impact and change your life. It's the, you're taking a walk with a friend, or somebody calls you when you least expect it, and it's those small moments. And I think that if I can help individuals focus on that too, I mean, one of the things is I want people to stop existing and start living. And existing is when you're on autopilot. Existing is when you're not being mindful, that you're just going to the next thing and going to the next thing. And um, it's those moments of like, somebody stopped by to see me today.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we don't realize sometimes the impact we have on other people, on making those moments. Hmm. I love that. I love that story with the journal, Michelle. That was really sweet. I wish I could get my mom to do that. I can say that because she'll never listen to this podcast, but, um, so I guess what I'm going to kind of jump back to is just, kind of just giving people some encouragement or some ideas, like, because I think a lot of people think like, oh, you know, I, I don't need help, or I don't need a coach, or, I can do this on my own. But I think most people benefit when they do find someone to work with, and, whether it's short term or, an ongoing process. What kind of suggestions or recommendations would you give for somebody who is looking for a coach?
I think that the first thing to recognize is when most people will come to a coach and reach out to a coach when they finally acknowledge that what they're doing is not working.
Mm.
That this is I've tried things. I'm doing all the other things, but okay, I just can't do this anymore. And I know years ago I had a client who came back to me. I had seen her for a while. She'd gone, and so when she finally came back, she's like, "Okay, I just can't do it." And I think that it's a matter though of also finding the right person for you. And it can be, coaching is an investment. And I will tell you also, somebody who does, I still see a few counseling clients. People put more skin in the game when they're paying out of pocket.
Mm.
If I'm going to pay you out of pocket, my insurance isn't covering this, then I know the work is on me. And I have on occasion had people come and say, I don't know what I need to do, but I know I need to do something. And so we will then sometimes spend several sessions really just exploring, where they need to start. But then I also have people who come to me and they'll like, I know that I'm going to retire. I know that I want to do something different. I'm not sure what I want to do. Please, help me work through these things.
Mm.
So maybe it just it varies. I've also worked with a lot of women who have had gastric surgery, and I've been their I guess you want to say accountability as they made behavior changes of helping them to truly look at their food differently. And I think that that's the great thing about a coach is that I to my client, you have me Monday through Friday. I'm available via text. We will see each other via Zoom or in person, for an hour a week. But they have me during business hours during the week to text and say, this is happening or that's happening. And I honestly love for them to send me texts that was like, this is my win. I didn't go off on that person at work, or I chose this for lunch instead of that. And so it is. It's. I think that many people have to get to the point of being extremely uncomfortable and extremely painful, and they know that they can't do what they're doing.
What kind of questions would you ask a coach, to kind of like find out if they're a fit for you?
Do you want me what I would ask you, or what you
Well,
want a
I think
client
just
to
as
ask
a
me?
general, yeah, what kind of
Okay.
questions do you think a client should ask if they were kind
Well,
of shopping around for a coach?
if they have never done coaching before, I think they really need to ask, what is coaching with you?
Mm.
Because I do believe, as you said earlier, not every coach coaches in the same way. And so getting an idea of, what does coaching, and I often tell my clients, by training, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I don't provide therapy when I'm coaching, but the reality is I never take that hat off. So someone who works with me is getting the benefit of someone who has certifications in different areas. I understand nutrition. I'm not pretending to be a nutritionist, but I also, I can pick up, like, this is anxiety. This is more than just thought work anxiety. This is, we physiologically have something going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to, what does coaching look like? What does coaching mean? Because there are going to be coaches who are like, okay, well, we're just going to meet once a week and that's all it is. And they're not going to be, I'm in the game with my clients. I'm a very boutique coach. So I form really strong relationships with my people. And actually, one of my clients, like, I'll send her things and she's like, are you in my head? That's exactly what I needed. And it's because I feel like I'm able to form that connection. I am also somebody, it may be, questions wise of, and I know that you also said this too, like, are you somebody who likes the woo woo? Are you gonna, embrace some of that thing, stuff? Or are you someone who's just very strict in, in your belief system? And I think a lot of times clients don't know what they need. So I think that's why it's very important as a coach to be very open in regards to, this is who I am. Now, I also, it's Lara, when she introduced me, and it says it on my website, I am my client's biggest cheerleaders. And I think Lara knows that. I'm my friend's biggest cheerleaders. I mean, I'm about, like, empowering people and motivating and inspiring. So I am my client's biggest cheerleaders. I am also, I can kick them in the, if that's what they need. And I'm not afraid to tell them that. And many times that's what they need. It's kind of like, when you work with a personal trainer, sometimes I had a personal trainer last December, and there were a couple of times I was cussing at her, out of love. But, it's like, but I needed that. And so if that's what a client needs, I tell them, I do not take BS. I will call somebody out if I know that they're not doing the work. A couple of years ago, I had a lady who paid for a 3-month session. 3 months with me, paid up front, and honestly only came to maybe 3 sessions.
Oh, wow. Crazy.
And, my thing is, well, I have your money. And I hate to say it like that, but I was showing up for her, and she wasn't showing up for herself because she wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Amy can relate to that a little bit, I think, as a fitness coach. She wants to kick some people in the butt, I'm sure, in a good way.
No, never. It's all done in love. No. So Cheryl, as we kind of get towards the end here a little bit, where can people find you if they're interested? I know Lara mentioned your website earlier, but do you also have social media, Facebook, Instagram, anything like that?
You can find me
Yeah.
as, once again, it's Sessions with Sheryl, and it is Sheryl, Sheryl. That is where I am able to be found on Facebook and Instagram. I also on LinkedIn. I'm Sheryl Woolverton. I do connect with people via LinkedIn because a lot of the work I do, as I said earlier, is with women who are in male-dominated fields and they're needing, they need that guidance. I also, I do a lot of speaking, so I like to be connected in that manner also.
Great.
Yeah, Cheryl's good at networking. That's one thing I could use some help on, and she's my cheerleader when it comes to that.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say this because this is where then I share with you. I don't feel very good at networking. That is one of those things where I
You're so
do a
good
lot
at
of
it.
self-coaching on myself, but because
Funny.
it would be very easy for me just to hide out.
We're all working on something, right?
Yeah.
We are.
Aw. Well,
Well,
I appreciate you coming on so much. I mean, Amy and Michelle, do you guys have any other questions, last questions, or anything
I just
before
want
we
to say
move on?
thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah,
Like, I
thank you.
really
Yep.
enjoyed checking out your website and what you do, before we came on, and your story is really inspiring. And so it was great to get to meet you in person and ask a few questions.
Yeah.
And and thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I would just reiterate that as well. We've certainly heard lots about you from Lara. And so it's great to have a face with a name and get to actually talk to you. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Certainly. Thank you, ladies, for having me. I appreciate it.
Our
All right.
pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we won't put you through the torture that we haven't done to any guests, which is us trying to get our chant right. So we'll sign off and
Yeah.
let you enjoy your evening.